The date is April 9th, 1978, and it is 10 o'clock in the morning. Most NBA players are getting ready for the day, but David Thompson is already at Cobo Arena in Detroit, lacing up his shoes. Today is the last day of the regular season, and he needs to do something most would think is impossible. He needs to score as many points as humanly possible to beat George Gervin. Not to win a championship or to save his team from playoff elimination.
George Gervin!
Just to take a scoring title from one of the greatest scorers we have ever seen. By halftime, David Thompson has 53 points, and by the final buzzer, he has 73. But by midnight, he lost. But before we talk about the fall from grace, we have to talk about the rise of this generational talent. Because David Thompson didn't just rise, he flew, both literally and figuratively. David grew up in Shelby, North Carolina, alongside 10 siblings, with almost no money. All he had was pavement and a hoop with no net. By the time he was in high school, people weren't just saying that he was good. They were saying the laws of physics didn't apply to him. Rumors went around saying David could grab the top of the backboard. Rumors are rumors though, but this next part is the truth. David Thompson could jump and grab a coin off the top of the backboard square. That is 11 feet and 6 inches off the ground. Just paint that picture in your mind for a second. His vertical was measured at 44 inches, making him a literal unicorn in his era. Just think about this. Nowadays, with nutrition, exercise science, and how we understand the body, you see more and more of these athletic freaks popping up all of the time. But back then, in David's era, there were no plyometrics, no nutrition plans, no strength or conditioning coaches, no recovery guides, etc., etc. So for David to have a 44-inch vertical, despite not having access to any of that, it made him look superhuman to everybody else. When Thompson arrived at North Carolina State in 1972, they handed him a uniform and a problem. That problem was UCLA. John Wooden's Bruins had won 7 straight national championships, with 88 consecutive wins. They weren't just a dynasty anymore. They were inevitable, just something you accepted, like gravity. North Carolina State was not supposed to beat UCLA. In fact, nobody was. But in the 1974 NCAA semifinals, David Thompson scored 28 points and grabbed 10 rebounds, and the Wolfpack had managed to pull off the impossible. Final score of the game was 80-77, and UCLA's 88-game win streak was dead. 2 days later, North Carolina State won the national championship.
Erupted in celebration.
And for his unmatched leaping ability and dominance, the man at the forefront of the dynasty's demolition was given a nickname, Skywalker. And the craziest part was that he was only 20 years old, and he hadn't even been drafted yet. What happens next is one of the strangest financial wars in the history of American sports. It's 1975, the NBA exists, but so does the ABA, the Rebel League, the flashier league, and the league that paid better, and both of them want David Thompson. The Atlanta Hawks draft him in the NBA, and the Virginia Squires draft him in the ABA. Both picked him first overall. And then the money starts talking. You see, David didn't want to play for either of those two teams. Atlanta had lowballed him, and they were a struggling franchise with a bad front office. Thompson said, "I don't want to play for a franchise that isn't committed to winning." Virginia was a different story. They were nearly bankrupt, and they had already sold Julius Erving and George Gervin just to keep the team. This is when Denver would swoop in. The Denver Nuggets were one of the best and most stable teams at the time, and they offered him a much higher contract than Atlanta. They were willing to accommodate him with anything he wanted, including building their entire offense around him. So, the Nuggets sent a 5-year deal for $2.8 million. Now, you probably heard that, and you're probably thinking, that sounds horrible. Who would take that deal? But you have to remember, this is 1975. And with that offer, David Thompson just signed the largest contract in the history of professional basketball. And from the moment he puts on that Nuggets uniform, the NBA realizes what they just let walk away. In his first ABA season, 26 points a game, at 21 years old, making professional grown men look like high school boys. Then in 1976, the ABA collapses. 4 teams were absorbed into the NBA, including Denver. David Thompson enters the most dominant basketball league on earth, and he is ready. His first NBA season, 25 points per game. His second season, 27 points per game. David's nickname fit him perfectly. It was given to him because of what he does when he's in the air. Because once Thompson leaves the ground, he doesn't come back down the same way other people do. He hangs and floats, almost like he is frozen in the air. Skywalker was the perfect nickname. Just like Luke, they were both in a class of their own. And somewhere in North Carolina, a teenager named Michael Jordan is watching, studying, and memorizing his every move. We have to go back to that day in Detroit, the last regular season game of the year. The Denver Nuggets are playing the Detroit Pistons, and David Thompson needs a miracle. Meanwhile, in San Antonio, George the Iceman Gervin is getting ready for his own game day, and he has no idea what's coming. The scoring race has been tight all year, but Gervin holds the lead. Thompson needs an extraordinary game just to make it close. What he gets instead is something better than extraordinary. He gets a piece of history. In the first quarter alone, he drops 32 points. The Detroit Pistons aren't even playing defense anymore. They're spectators. They're watching something happen that they will tell their grandchildren about, and their grandchildren probably won't even believe them. By halftime, he had 53. The opposing crowd, Detroit's crowd, is on its feet, cheering the Skywalker on. By the end of the third quarter, they've stopped cheering for their own team entirely. They're just watching David in awe. The final buzzer, David Thompson scored 73 points, the second most points scored in one game at the time. And he sits down and he waits. Because somewhere in San Antonio, George Gervin is still playing. Thompson showers and changes. He's earned this. He has done everything a man can do. Then the numbers come in. George Gervin scores 63 points. David Thompson won the battle, but lost the war. Gervin wins the scoring title by the slimmest of margins. Gervin wins the scoring title by 0.07 points per game. 73 points, and it still wasn't enough. If you're new here, this is what Court Chronicles does. We go places the box score won't take you. Subscribe if you want more of this. Now, back to David Thompson, because everything that I just told you, unfortunately, that's not even the worst part of the story. The NBA in the 70s was a different world. There was no drug testing, no real accountability. The cities never slept, and there was a culture that was quietly and steadily destroying some of the most talented men who would ever put on a basketball uniform. David Thompson arrived in that world as the most gifted player alive, and the world offered him some things in return. Some were good and some were bad, but one of these would change the entire trajectory of his life. It started with parties. Thompson was young, famous, wealthy, and in rooms with all the rest of the famous and the wealthy. The invitations were constant, and the substances were always there. One of these substances would crawl into David Thompson's life and bind him like a python snake that had wrapped itself around its prey. And that substance would be cocaine. It wouldn't happen all at once though. It never does. Cocaine creeps into your mind slowly but surely. It convinces you it's helping. It tells you that the reason you're playing great is because of it and not despite it. Illusion becomes reality for an addict. David Thompson was one of the rarest men on the planet, a face of basketball who had limitless jumping power, a generational scoring talent, and one of the most explosive players in basketball history with the stats to back it up. But when cocaine came into his life, those same stats started to slip. 27 points became 22. 22 became 19. The man touted as Skywalker looked like he was human again. The Nuggets knew. The league knew. This was a very open secret that everyone in the NBA kept very, very quietly. And then came the night that ended everything. March 1984, Studio 54 in New York City. David Thompson, 29 years old, still technically in his prime, falls down a flight of stairs. He tears the ligaments in his knee and severely damages the tendons as well. The injury is catastrophic. He tries to come back. Of course he does. That's what people with that kind of will always do. They keep trying, even when their body has given up before their mind. He plays 19 more games across 2 seasons, and then he retires. He is only 30 years old. David Thompson, the man who matched Michael Jordan's vertical before Michael Jordan even had a vertical, is done. And Michael Jordan is just getting started. This is the part of the story that nobody tells. We know Michael Jordan. 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, the logo, the shoes, a legend so enormous you hear new tales of him every month to this day. But Jordan has been clear in interviews, documentaries, and private conversations that eventually went public about who shaped him. Not Dr. J or Kareem, David Thompson. They played in the same state on rival programs that would never face each other because the NCAA had rules preventing it. So Jordan watched from the outside, studied the footwork, the mid-range game, the hang time, the way Skywalker turned a basketball court into something closer to flight. Jordan once called David the greatest player he had ever seen, and he doesn't actually mean the greatest ever. He means the man who was directly responsible for inspiring him, the man who showed a young MJ what is possible on the basketball court. Now, I want you to sit with a question and think hard about it while you listen. What does the 1980s look like if David Thompson doesn't fall down those stairs? What if he gets clean in 1981 instead of 1984? What if his knee holds? What if the Skywalker and Air Jordan actually have to share the same decade, clashing year after year at full power in the same league, chasing the same rings? Does Thompson win 1 or 2? Does the word dynasty belong to Denver before Chicago? And let's be real about one thing. Thompson does not interfere with Jordan's title windows. Thompson would be too old to compete with a peak MJ. But how would the matchups look? A peak Thompson versus an up-and-coming hungry Jordan? We don't know. And unfortunately, we will never know. David Thompson did get clean. It didn't happen overnight either. Recovery from cocaine addiction in the 1980s, without the infrastructure, public understanding, and the language that we have for it now, was brutal, private, and lonely. But he did it. He went back to North Carolina State, the place where his kid self with a 44-inch vertical broke the most dominant dynasty college basketball had ever seen, and he got his degree. He started speaking to young people about what that road really looks like, about what waits at the bottom of the stairs you think you'll never fall down. In 1996, David Thompson was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. He deserved it. He deserved it more than almost anyone who has ever played this game. But here's what I keep coming back to. David Thompson scored 73 points in an NBA game and still lost the scoring title. He was the most physically gifted player of his generation. And his generation includes Julius Erving, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and the opening chapter of Michael Jordan. He inspired arguably the greatest basketball player who ever lived. And then, cocaine took him, and a staircase in New York took his knee. The basketball gods closed his book at just 30 years old. Michael Jordan gave us the air, but David Thompson built the sky. If you like this story, there are more exactly like it on this channel. Players who should have been legends, careers that got taken, moments that statistics will never capture. I'll see you in the next one.